only go by Butch this episode. You have to call me Butch.
Butch.
Yeah.
All right, Butch. Who am I? Do I need to have a name?
You're Gage.
Butch Gage out here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll be Gage.
Where were you before this podcast? What were you doing today? Gage.
I'm for sure shooting. I was shooting with the boys. Live
rounds?
It's turkey season.
Gobble gobble.
Gobble. I was chewing on the tobacco
Nice.
with my boys shooting. We were shooting. We saw a buzzard. We saw a buzzard out, and you know what buzzard means? Buzzard means you're gonna find yourselves some coyotes.
Oh.
So we's out there chewing our tobacco, shooting our buzzards, and
No, I think it was Guzzards.
guzzards, and you'll never believe the size of this coyote we done saw. We done saw this coyote. Now let me tell you something. This coyote was about damn near the size of a lion. Biggest coyote I done ever seen. What about you? Butch? Tell me about your story today.
Well, first off, my pickup broke down on the way here, so that's why I was late.
Oh no, it's that carburetor in it.
Yeah, the carburetor. So, I had to push her all the way down 21st, and then I went south down Woodlawn.
Of course.
And by the time I got there, it was already dawn. And so then I cracked open a Natty Ice because I knew I was going to be late.
Yes, sir. Wait, let me get a little bit of the. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love that Natty.
So I was hoping we could just kind of frame this conversation for our audience, give sort of an outline.
That's so bad.
And Jack's back. Jack is back.
Ew, icky.
What's wrong with the Natty Ice?
I do not like that.
It's 5.9%.
All right, so what's today's episode about, George? Orient the audience. That's what you're doing. You're orienting the audience.
All right. Well, just so people know how long we're going to be spending on each topic, I was thinking we could start with maybe 10 to 15 on hunting, and then the next 5 to 10 about fishing.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know fishing was included in hunting.
Well, I think it's important that we clarify the distinction between the two, because a lot of people get them confused, and they're totally separate. So then after that, we can maybe talk about guns for another 10 to 15. I got a new semi-automatic that I was hoping to show you.
I can't wait to see it. Yeah.
Holds 6,000 rounds.
6,000 rounds?
Yeah. It's got a suppressor,
Jack is
too.
having a really hard time holding on to Gage here. I think we're losing Gage.
So yeah, guns.
Guns.
And then, I have this new workout routine that I was hoping to show you.
What is it?
Well, it's not a workout routine, but just my diet that I've been on.
Okay.
It's you know what, like meatless meat is, right? It's like fake meat.
Yeah, like vegan shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just sort of imagine the opposite of that.
Sort of imagine the opposite of meatless meat. So meat.
Yeah. I think you got it. So
the opposite of meatless meat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to take it one step further. So we're not, when it comes to like plates, bowls, utensils, those are also made out of meat. Yeah. Because plastic is
okay, right? Of
you
course.
get it. Yeah.
Of course. Right. Of course.
So we got, bacon forks, ham sliced.
Yeah,
plates.
that's what I was. It's like a nice ham steak plate. Yeah.
But I don't want to get too far into it.
Yeah, that's coming around minute 30.
Okay.
That's coming around minute 30. All right.
Wow.
So our audience is in for a treat. I think that this has to be over now. I can't come up with any more manly things to talk about.
I was like up all night thinking about random shit I could talk about.
Yeah, I think I about end there.
I love that the hair behind you kind of looks like a mullet. It really sells it.
I should have tried to do that. Yeah. Wow, Gage.
Yeah.
We could have been that way. We we grew up next to farms and like country folk, like oil refineries and farmers.
Yeah, we were the ones who stuck out because we stayed indoors and played video games.
That's right.
And played sports.
That's true.
Yeah, we were the ones who stuck out.
If it's not clear by now, George and I today are talking about masculinity and how we are the two most masculine people we know, and that's why we thought we would be the best people to talk about what that means. And I think as we continue talking, we'll find out what that means, like how masculinity has played a role in our growing up. And there are different types of masculinity, I think. Like there's this kind of masculinity where, hunting, guns, beer, but then there's also like the
boobs.
Boobs, of course, can't miss boobs. I would never miss boobs. But then also there's the kind of like Christian fundamentalist masculinity, which isn't necessarily guns, boobs, but it's man of the house,
breadwinner.
Yeah, exactly. Women listen to you. You're the leader. So I would say that is the reason we're able to easily satirize this type of masculinity is because in my experience, the other type of masculinity would be a little too close to home because I never really experienced this type of masculinity firsthand in my life. But the type of masculinity I did experience was a lot more like force the women around you to shut up, demand respect from them if they don't. And I think that has affected me for a long time. I've kind of been thinking about it a lot for the last few years. And you and I just talked about it recently. And we're like, we need to talk about that on the podcast. So,
yeah, I feel like there's a lot there, and it felt like almost low-hanging fruit for our podcast. There was going to be plenty to get into, so I was really excited, and almost so excited that I had to start with satire.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So also something fun is we're recording this. We're videoing this. So any video that's taken out of context is just going to have us in America and Hunter's gear. That's going to be really fun. But yeah, if you don't follow us on Instagram, that's where we put a lot of our reels from this podcast. So follow us on Instagram at that which binds us pod. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Roll the music.
Do.
What if I just don't actually put music in and just have it be that?
Take the reins on this. I feel like you have a good vision.
Yeah, I just have questions. Something I learned from our video game episode is there's one part where I was just kind of like talking. I was like kind of explaining our story in video games. Like, oh yeah, we had this experience. This was the way it was for us. And I realized, well, you said that's not really my experience. So I've been thinking about that in regards to masculinity. I definitely have an experience with masculinity of like, as a child, what men or boys do, as a young adult, what men or boys do, and then as an adult, what men are supposed to do. I'm going to keep playing with this stupid hat.
You don't have to.
All right now, partner.
You really could take it off at any point.
I think it's making a mark.
I mean, you're kind of a pussy if you take it off, but you can take it off if you want.
Okay, great. I can't be a pussy. We can't have that on the pod. So yeah, I think my first question to you then is mostly just like a get to know you. What was either your experience with masculinity, or what would you say your definition of masculinity is? Let's start with at 13 years old, what would your definition of masculinity have been? And now what do you think your definition of masculinity is?
Okay. So when I think about myself at 13 and the aspect of masculinity that affected me most, that was like at the precipice of my thoughts most often, was like emotional vulnerability. So like 13 is a really good age because you are too old to cry.
Yeah. That was one of the notes I wrote was, okay, you're too old to cry.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that a lot because when I really think about how it felt to cry at that age, the pressure about not crying, if that weren't applied to the situation, I would have cried a lot less.
That's so true.
Like,
if you weren't spending 90% of your energy trying not to cry,
right,
you probably wouldn't have cried.
Right, because the thing that brought it on, I got hurt or I was embarrassed, whatever those things were something I probably would have cried about, but people were looking at me and I was embarrassed and my face is swelling up and I'm about to cry and I know I'm about to cry. So it's a like overflow of emotions that leads to crying.
It's too heavy to think of, like, it's like the heaviness of the thing that happened that makes me want to cry on top of the I'm not allowed to be crying here. And how embarrassing would that be if I were to cry?
Right.
And then your body just like betrays you. It's like, yeah, we're crying.
Yeah.
Get over it, buddy. We're here.
That really, just like the emotional vulnerability piece of, don't cry. Being tough is really cool at that age because you're growing up from a boy to a man. So the quicker you do that, the cooler it kind of seems.
Yeah.
Toughness and emotional vulnerability are really hard. It's hard. It's hard to like the distinction of emotional like vulnerability and weakness.
Yeah.
Like vulnerability and weakness are the same thing.
Yeah.
When you're that age.
They're identical.
And that's hard to deal with at that age. So that's really what comes to mind when I'm thinking about 13-year-old me.
And like masculinity.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because something I've been confused about, or at least like maybe unfair about, is I put a lot of this on Christianity or like the Christian environment we grew up in, which I think is true and fair. Like the Christianity we grew up in deserves its fair share of hits for that. But how much of that do you think was just like society, and how much of it do you think was the Christianity aspect? Like society was also G.I. Joes and toy cars and toy trucks and not paints, not artistic shit. Like it was violent video games and G.I. Joes. Do you remember anything specifically Christian or specifically societal that changed something in you as a kid that you're like, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be, and the way I currently am is not in line with that, so I need to change?
So the interesting part about my childhood that's just a little different than yours is that Ellie, my older sister, is right in between you and I. So me growing up, she was like a cool older sibling, whereas for you, she was a younger sister, so you probably didn't want to like do activities with her that were girl shit because you were too tough for that, and she was your younger sister. But for me,
I guess I should say I did want to. I didn't feel like I was allowed to want to. I felt ashamed for wanting to. But it was that externally.
So I fortunately had a lot of great experiences with her and her friends. I remember Ellie had this really beautiful Barbie mansion.
I remember it too.
How often did you unstrap the clothes to see what was under the Barbies?
All the time.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, it was. I also did that with the G.I. Joes, though.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
So I got to enjoy a lot of feminine stuff without feeling a lot of shame because I was really young at this point. And yeah, I just got to enjoy a lot of it. And a lot of Ellie's friends saw me as a fun little brother that was kind of goofy. I remember one of their favorite things to do was we had this old boom box that we put CDs in and play music. I remember one night, some birthday party, we would all pick a song on the CD and then go rehearse a dance number to it.
It's amazing. That sounds so fun.
Just in the basement, just being doofuses. And I was the only boy. And it didn't really feel that way. And And yeah, I really just got to be like a fun little brother that was like, everyone thought I was funny.
Yeah.
It was
there
just
were
like
no
great
restrictions on your masculinity at that point.
So I'm like lip syncing to this like pop song from 2009.
Yeah.
Just going off, and all of my sister's friends who are like 3 years older than me are just eating it up.
Yeah.
And I get to be as like bombastic and emotive as I want to be. And it was really fun. So I got to enjoy a lot of that. And then I think what changed, a really like noticeable change for me, was 2008 when Macy and Silas came to America. It was 2008, right?
Yeah, I think 2008. Okay. Yeah, that feels right. Maybe even 7.
Well, so like the McVeighs, which Faith,
from last
you've all heard on the podcast. Her family stayed at our house for a week or two while our parents and Teddy were in Ethiopia meeting Macy and Silas. So they stayed at our house for like 2 weeks, and I remember Mercy, Faith's little sister who was my age. We just like got to enjoy our 2 weeks. It was incredible. We were playing Flash games on the computer together. That's so fun. She had the arrow keys. I had the AWSD keys. It was incredible. So I remember that being really great. And something about that moment was the last time Mercy and I ever hung out one-on-one. Because Macy showed up like a week or two later.
Whoa, yeah.
And I've thought about that a lot because I used to think there wasn't like a moment Mercy and I stopped being friends. And we've always like been friends. But something about that distinctly, it was like, okay, now you guys are older. Macy's here. Macy and Mercy will go be friends. They're girls. They'll go be like, we're 9-10 years old. I have other guy friends that I can't hang out with. So we kind of just like separated and went our different ways. So I remember that very distinctly. Like, I no longer had female friends at that age.
So that's like exactly the same as the Faith story that we told about Brother Bear and like being too old to have a friend of the opposite sex when you're like 9 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's wild.
So I think you asked a story where I noticed masculinity. All that to say, I got to enjoy femininity maybe a little more than you did. Yeah, I guess that's all I really wanted to say. I had a really good perception of femininity. And I think I had to just like kind of go a different direction.
So I would say I've had similar, like pre-puberty, my experience with masculinity was pretty non-existent. I mean, I wasn't, don't play with Barbies, play with G.I. Joe. Pretty typical stuff. I don't think there are really many expectations on you, at least in Christian culture, to be much more than a kid, other than if you die, you're going to go to hell. And if any of your friends are not Christian, they're going to go to hell too. Other than that expectation, the masculinity expectation is pretty nil in my experience. Some other people may have different experiences as well. But what really hit me, or when it really hit me, was high school. It was kind of like growing up, there was like, it was hit on or touched on, like men do this, women do this. Men are this way, women are this way.
Right.
Men this, women this. And then it hits high school and it's like, oh, now I'm one of the men. Like I'm 14 years old. I'm horny. I know I'm a man now. Whatever.
You're wearing pants. The girls are wearing skirts.
Exactly. And the high school we went to made it so clear the way women was this way and the way men were this way. Men couldn't have their hair go past their collar or past their ears. Women had to have their, like, it just felt like very. So that was when I remember a lot of my very like specific memories of masculinity, or at least specific opinions on masculinity, were cultivated in high school. And then it was after that I kind of had to break it down. But the things that I was breaking down, I felt like were more from high school than from beforehand. When beforehand, there were the typical things, and honestly, maybe more than I'm not even aware of. But was that similar to you in high school? Did you feel like there was a major divide between men and women?
I remember watching you in high school when I was in like middle school, and I remember being so impressed by how many female friends you had. Mm-hmm. And not in like a horny romantic way, or I don't know. You just legitimately loved your female friends. Mm-hmm. And I had never seen that before.
I have a point on that in my notes.
All right, this is how I perceived it. I perceived it as just like, wow, that's really cool. I want to be like that. I really enjoy women, like talking to women. I want them to be a part of my friend circles, but there's just no avenue for it right now because I'm in middle school.
Yeah.
And it's weird. But in high school, it seemed like, oh, you can like go hang out in like guy and girl situations. And I don't know. It seemed like Bible studies were a common avenue for that.
Yeah, they were.
So yeah, I just remember looking at you and being like, well, that's cool. You can have female friends too. I just always like, women are naturally, like their friendships, they just dive into like emotional vulnerability way better than men do. And I always envied that in my relationships. So I was really excited for that piece in high school. When I was going to high school, I was like, this will be cool to also have female friends.
So the point that I wanted to touch on, which you just hit, is I think the reason I had all those feminine friends and the few male friends I had were pretty feminine-ish men, like how I would have described femininity back then, was because I am like a natural like oversharer. I like talking about myself. I like conversations with people are typically very intense for me. Just like we'll sit down for coffee and we'll talk for 3 hours about trauma. That's fun to me. But men don't typically find that fun. In my experience, it's not like men are not as into that. So to me, having female friends was also like, well, I'm so uncomfortable with intimacy with men that I'm just going to make a ton of female friends and be intimate with them in this like relational way, because God knows I'm not going to sit down with a male friend and tell him my deepest, darkest secrets. But a woman, oh yeah, I can be intimate with women. Like I know how to do that. I know how to talk with women. It's the same as like a hug. Like I can give a woman a hug any day. Like, hi, what's up? Like hug. I like you and I have even talked about this, like hugging you goodbye when you leave still is something that I have to tell myself to do. But when a woman comes or goes, I'm like, oh yeah, hey, what's up? Here's a hug. Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but there's something held up in me or built in me that's like intimacy with men is scary and bad and looked down upon. But intimacy with women is like comfortable and safe and easy. And so that's how I remember high school. Like I remember sitting in the back of Spanish class with one of my friends, and she and I were talking about like, I was telling her like about lust. I was talking about like, oh yeah, like when a commercial comes on and this, and we're just like talking back and forth very comfortably. I never would have had that conversation with a man. And I don't know why. I think looking back on it now, and something that is still a block for me is having relationships with men. It's hard for me because I am afraid of intimacy with men. And I think it's easy for me to say men also don't want to be intimate with me, so it's masculinity's problem. But I think if I pushed myself, I could find intimacy with men more easily than I think. I just like, it's easier to blame society and masculinity and Christianity as opposed to just saying like, no, it's a block for me. It's a mental block that I can move past and hug my male friends and tell my male friends that I love them. Like that shouldn't be hard for me, but it is. So yeah, that's something I'm interested in uncovering, but that was kind of my experience in high school with female and male friendships, I think.
That's kind of what we were like in high school. Was we both, it's funny, wanted emotional vulnerability.
Yeah.
And recognized that in high school.
Which makes me wonder, do most men just want emotional vulnerability and don't know how to say it? Or are we a pretty small survey size for that?
No, I think humans want that.
Okay.
But it's hard. I
have a feeling you might be right about that.
But it's hard. Yeah. People express it differently. Okay. So that's what we were like in high school. But I wanted to talk about an interesting discovery I found in a podcast that it's more on the political side of men and women.
I listened to this podcast actually.
Oh, you did
now
listen
I know
to
the stat you're talking about.
Oh, nice. Okay. So it was interesting. They were talking about how when it comes to voting for presidencies, since like the 1900s, whatever, there hasn't been much of a gap between men and women's voting. They kind of just equally are voting for both parties. And Ronald Reagan's presidency kind of started a gap. So they threw a stat at me, and I wanted to share it with everyone. All right. If you are currently older than 43 years old, you have never lived in an election where the majority of men voted Democrat.
Whoa.
The majority of men have voted Republican for the last 40 years. And I think it's vice versa for women. The majority of women. So they were kind of drawing this distinction of political parties have now sort of separated toward genders.
Yeah.
Which I just found really fascinating. And I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about that.
I do. I wonder, and I think divorce, like women being allowed to have divorce and it being readily available, happened probably a little sooner or like more before this. But something tells me it has to do with divorce and women being a little bit more independent.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring up divorce is because today I've been seeing a lot. Today is the day that Steven Crowder went public with the fact that his wife divorced him. And many times in his, today is like the day. And many times in his saying it, he was like, and the state of Texas just allows a woman to divorce a man whether or not he's okay with it. So I have no rights in this matter. She can just divorce me if she wants. And he kept saying that as if that was some gotcha.
Whoa.
And I'm like, good, right? It's good that women have the right to leave a husband they don't want to be with anymore. Is it
okay, did he acknowledge that if the shoe is on the other foot?
No, of course not.
Okay.
It's Steven Crowder.
Okay, well, yes, you given. I'm just so does he legitimately think that it should be different for men and women? Divorce should be different. Men.
I think he would.
It doesn't matter.
I hear what you're saying. I think he would probably say, I think both should have to agree or something. And I think that's stupid. I think he's wrong. And I think that's...
No, I 100% agree. Women should be able to divorce.
But anyway, so what I'm thinking is the stat with Reagan, starting with Reagan.
Yeah, political parties being separated by gender.
Yes. So a tweet that I saw was if that didn't exist, if women weren't allowed to divorce their husband without their husband say so, men would be served arsenic sandwiches all the time. Women would just be killing their husbands left and right because they have no other way out of a shitty relationship if they can't divorce them. So now I'm thinking, okay, women have these rights now.
Right.
In the 80s, women are able to divorce their husbands. They're allowed to think for themselves. They're allowed to make the decisions for themselves. They're allowed to open banks for themselves. That was a thing that they couldn't do, is they couldn't open bank accounts. So, okay, now we're in the 80s. Reagan is a pretty far right, conservative, America's America president. So I think it makes sense. I think then as things go on, women are more single, or at least they're single for longer. There are more divorces, all that stuff. It does track with feminist history the way I remember it, and that is poorly. But I didn't know that it was like that for all 40 years.
Yeah.
That it was that strict right down the line.
I didn't either.
Also, that men had always only voted Republican.
The majority have always voted Republican.
Sucks.
Okay, so I wanted to back up your point about women having more independence about divorce and everything. So when Title IX was passed, it was either the 60s or 50s, which Title IX is you can't discriminate based on gender, race, and when it comes to jobs, school, no longer can you discriminate based on, all those things. So at that point, men were 13% more likely to get a college degree than women. Mm-hmm. So just to show some progress.
Yeah.
Women are now 15% more likely to get a college degree than men.
Wow.
Because, well, I mean, you can, whatever, because, and that's when, you get into opinions and everything.
Yeah.
But women are that fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Because we built the school system for men.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago. And women have had to thrive in this system built by men despite the way the system is built. And they're outperforming men in this system. So all that to say, I just wanted to like back up your point of like, yeah, women have become much more independent. And like at that point of like time, women are obviously dependent on men as the breadwinner. And the motivation for the feminist movement is to like prevent that from being the case. Like, and so now, and this is something I'm interested in. So now looking at what men's role is in life and in relationships and how we approach life, that was always our role, was the breadwinner, and to be the one providing for our wife and family, yada, yada. So now that that's not the case and we don't need to be doing that, women are actually outperforming us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You and I will probably both have women in our life very close to us who make more money than us.
I currently do. My wife currently makes more money than I do.
So yeah, like going based on that, like how do men find an identity that isn't the breadwinner? Because that is a barbaric way to live our lives. And none of us actually want to do that, but society has kind of pushed us in that direction. And how do we not do that? Because I don't want to be that, but I find myself falling into that trap.
Interesting. That's a good question. That's interesting to think about it juxtaposed with like the male breadwinner is dying out.
Yeah, the need for that is dying out.
I think it's hard to strip myself and my current opinions from the greater societal like opinion, because my first thought is like, you find something else to live for. Like, you make less money and you have a hell of a time going on trips on my wife's dime. That's not that hard. Hey-o. That's a pretty great life to live. But I have no ego around it, and I used to have ego around it. I've done work to strip my ego from it. And I find another purpose. I find something else that makes me feel like I'm doing my job, and that job no longer has anything to do with my masculine traits or what I'm bringing to the relationship, or at least what I'm historically have been supposed to bring to the relationship. Now it's like, I am this way, and maybe that's masculine, or maybe that's because of my masculinity, or maybe that's because of the way my brain works, but I am this way, so this is what I can bring to the relationship. Like, I do yard work. I mow my yard every weekend. That's not because I'm a boy and she's a girl. That's not because I have a penis and she doesn't. Like, I want to mow it. And I have that opinion with a sort of like curiousness and non-judgmental, like, maybe that is because of masculinity. Maybe that is because of the patriarchy that I want to mow and Maddie doesn't. Okay, I want to mow. So what? Like, right. What's the harm being done there?
Neither of you are combative about the idea of you mowing and her doing some other chore.
That's the agreement that she and I have. I also do my own laundry. It's not an expectation that she'll do my laundry. I will.
Do you make your own sandwiches though?
Actually, babe.
Babe.
Babe. Where are sandwiches?
My beer is empty.
I do make my own sandwiches, and I do the dishes, and I do my laundry. I know. Guys, stop. Guys, seriously. Get it. I'm not that great of a guy for this. It's just like normal. We've melted into our roles based on the need of the house and the need of each other and the skills of ourselves that we can bring to the table. Maddie loves decorating. That's a typically feminine trait that she has, and she brings it to the table, and she decorated her house in a way that I couldn't have done. And maybe that's the patriarchy. Maybe that's just Maddie wants to decorate. I love doing my laundry. I like doing our dishes. I like doing our yard. I don't know. Am I a feminist who likes doing his yard, or am I like what, it's like,
right.
So then the question for the greater society, what do men have now that the breadwinning male is dying out? You have the dishes, you have kids, you have a job that pays half as much. There's like, the world is so much bigger than these very like defined and predefined goals for ourselves, that like, I feel so much more free now that I know I can do whatever I want. I feel so much more free knowing that I can follow whatever feminine trait I want to have and whatever masculine trait I want to have, with no judgment and no expectation on me, because that's the life I want to live. So, I think that's my answer to men. But I know most men who are masculine men and still appreciate the breadwinning male will think like, oh, I'm just a cuck. I'm just some like dude who likes his wife to treat him like shit, and I'm gonna be a little beta male, and they're the alpha and they want to be the alpha. And that's fine. Sure, do it. But I don't know, you're missing out on a lot of life. It's fun to decorate. It's fun to do dishes. It's fun to bake. And you're missing out on that shit because you're too alpha. And I think that's sad and boring. I don't think it's bad to be that way. I don't think you're harming people necessarily, unless you are. But I just think it's a boring way to live. Like, you're living half of the human existence because you're choosing to reject all of femininity. And femininity is so vast. And it's fun and exciting and interesting. And I think to be only one of those things by choice is boring. So the first time I remember like being aware of masculinity and being aware that I didn't want to be a part of it, I remember really vividly. I was sitting alone in the basement of where I was living, watching Queer Eye, and I ended up actually writing a blog about it, and it's called Masculine. But I was sitting alone watching Queer Eye, and it was a very, very beautiful episode. They're all beautiful episodes. If you want to cry, watch Queer Eye. Nothing actually. This I think goes great with the show Queer Eye. Have you ever watched Queer Eye?
Mm-hmm. A lot of like the first and second season, and then I haven't watched it since then. But
it feels like they go hand in hand, because Queer Eye is like a bunch of traditionally feminine men just like changing people's lives and experiencing the whole and the fullness of humanity and existence in themselves, without judgment and without the rules and restrictions of what masculinity is supposed to be. So I'm watching this, and I'm maybe like senior year of college. I've deconstructed my faith a lot, but I still like, there are things that are pulling me in different directions, and I'm not really sure like who I am or what I'm supposed to hold on to, what from Christianity is safe, what Christianity I don't want. It's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. And I watched this episode and I'm crying. And like, I felt in that moment a lot of shame for like crying, because men don't cry, and an extra layer of shame because I'm watching gay men make me cry. So I'm like, I think I'm gay. I'm like, this is bad to be doing, to be experiencing. And this, it wasn't like a thought, like a cognitive thought in my head, but it was more just like a sense that was like, ooh, don't do this. Ooh, stop crying. Stop. And I sat with that for a second. Like I like remember it. I was like, George, your hand is up.
Question.
Yes.
Would sad movies make you cry at this period of your time?
Yeah.
Did you feel shame about those moments?
No.
So it was specifically about the men in this show.
It was that they were gay, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a woman's show. It was a show for women.
Okay.
With gay men that was making me at the time a straight man
crying in itself was not the shame.
I don't know. If I cried at a rom-com, I'd feel shame. If I cried at Interstellar, which I did, I wouldn't feel shame because Interstellar is a guy's movie, and guys are allowed to cry at guys' movies.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Okay, no, I was trying to get to the root of the shame. And I think that's really interesting.
I think that was the root of the shame, is that I was doing a woman thing. I was doing a feminine thing, and it was making me cry, which is also a feminine thing. So then it just got me thinking. I spent like that week thinking about masculinity and thinking about, in very like rudimentary terms at that time, like, what is, like, why am I not allowed to cry? Why do men not cry? And then I'm thinking back, and I'm thinking of all the times that, like, you know, mom told me to suck it up, or dad told me to suck it up, or one of my brothers told me to suck it up, or like, men don't cry, or you're too old to cry, boys don't cry, yada, whatever. Or you're a girl for crying. I got that a lot. Yeah. Stop being a girl. Stop being so gay. Stop being,
a baby.
I remember in high school, a friend of mine, he wasn't a friend of mine, called me a queer all the time. He was like, he just like would pass me in the hall, like, you're a queer. You're such a queer. And at the time I like thought it was cool to brush it off, like, whatever, I'm not a fucking queer. I'm not gay. I'm not one of those things. So then I'm thinking about it now, crying in the basement, watching Queer Eye, wondering, what are all those things? The men don't cry. You're such a queer. I'm not a queer. These queer men are making me cry. There's a lot happening. And so I sat down to write, and I wrote for, probably 8 hours that day. Work was slow, and I just wrote all during work. And I just like broke it down, and it made the most sense to me. It like was when I finally opened up my eyes and was like, I am a little gay in an authentically true way. I think I realized I am not only do I like refuse to be a part of this masculine system, this masculine structure, but I don't want to be naturally. My system does not naturally align with this fully masculine, fully straight method that I had been taught to want and taught to be a part of. It had never really aligned with me. And I didn't understand until sitting on the couch watching Queer Eye why it didn't align with me. And then I could articulate to myself why it didn't align with me. It took me a long time to articulate it to anyone else why. But I remember so vividly at that point, I was like, fuck masculinity. Fuck the whole binary of, like, everything at that point was on the table. And I don't know what it was. I don't know why I like knew, but it was like a flood of truth hit my system that was like, you're bisexual. You like men, and that's okay. You like women things, and that's okay. And like, now live your life. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the 360 of existence for humans, the entire spectrum of living that I only ever tapped into 50% of, or felt like I was allowed to tap into 50% of, that now that I feel like I've genuinely tapped into 100% of it, I'm so free, and I'm so in love with living. I get really worked up about this life that I feel like I'm living now, that I've just one time said, you know what? Like, just open that door, see what happens. And I opened a door to an entire universe that I hadn't even seen. So I think that's why, like, even when you said at the very beginning, like, oh, masculinity is like low hanging fruit, super easy to, like, yeah, that's my shit. Like, I love talking about it because I feel like I've seen the Matrix now. I've seen both worlds, and yeah, I don't know. I love the way my life is, and I feel so genuinely that, like, this is the truth of who I am and the truth of who I've always been. Like, we joked about the G.I. Joe. Like, there were, things that have told me that from the beginning. Like, I liked G.I. Joes a lot. I liked naked G.I. Joes a lot. But I liked Barbies, and I liked naked Barbies. So it was really easy to lean that direction. It was really easy to only open myself up to that world because that was the acceptable world to live in. But there were other worlds that I peeked into. I just didn't like to open the door to it. So I don't know. It felt important to share. It felt important to share, and it felt like so much of my story on masculinity revolves around like that one experience, as well as like what that has meant for me from here on out. So yeah, I think that I just wanted to share it.
I did not know that you had that experience in college, that Queer Eye experience that you're referencing. And that's really cool. I think Queer Eye, the show, would freak out if they heard that story. They would be beside themselves. I think that's what they aim to do with that show, is explore a different side of manhood that is not commonly showcased in popular media. So that's like just like so cool. I noticed. So I went and visited my girlfriend in Portland a few weeks ago, and two of the people closest to her in her life are her cousin and her cousin's roommate. And they're one's like 50, one's like 40. So they're kind of older than us. And something that I really, really admire about them is that they're really in touch with their childlike selves. Commonly, they will, for fun, like make arts and crafts or go try something new. Like they did some glass burning activity for one of their birthdays, like blowing glass.
Yeah.
Yes, something like that. They love trying new things, and I've never seen 40 and 50-year-olds try new things and experience life in this way.
Yeah.
And I was looking at myself, like looking at just all the arts and crafts that they had made, and I was just really like impressed and curious why I never, ever think to do that.
Mm-hmm.
To just like create something like that in an artistic way. And I associate a lot of that with femininity. So I guess I don't know why it's so difficult. There's a lot of like ideas I have about it. But I'm curious what avenues you are exploring that for yourself. Just diving into that femininity that you're so excited about. I want to hear about some of those avenues.
Yeah, I think what makes me excited about it is the complete and utter lack of judgment around the things that I enjoy. So like I said, I like mowing. I enjoy that. I enjoy going out, listening to my music, and wiping out the top layer of grass because it looks nice and makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Like, so I can experience that with absolutely no judgment because I know that I'm also going to experience a thing that is maybe typically more feminine with the same amount of no judgment. So, for instance, I love baking. I don't know why.
Pussy.
It's just
That's the Natty Ice talking. I'm sorry.
I don't think I can do this podcast with you anymore.
This podcast has been me waiting for that moment for an hour, just waiting for the perfect moment, and I was never gonna know it was perfect.
You should have said it when I said I was bisexual.
No, I needed to get past this entire Natty Ice to know it was a good moment. Sorry. I think it's really cool that you love baking. And yes, you might be a pussy, but I think it's cool.
But I think pussies are cool.
Because I'm a man. No, I'm sorry.
So no,
I think it's cool that you love baking.
I think that's exactly what what it is though.
That's what you're battling.
Yeah, I like baking. I like fashion. Fashion is something I'm getting into right now that I think is kind of fun. The way I do my hair, I try to do my hair in ways that make me feel happy, not in ways that are strictly non-feminine. So like, yeah, stuff like that are ways that I push myself, but it's not necessarily about trying to be feminine. It's about trying to be Jack, independent on whether or not that is feminine or masculine.
And even if you dive into one of those moments that are hyper feminine and realize it's not for you, it's still in judgment free zone.
Yes.
You don't have to first know that it's something you like to be able to explore a feminine thing. And that's really, like, I don't know, but like for me, that's really hard to come to terms with. Like, I can go do something that's hyper feminine, realize it's not for me, but feel like judgment free in this experience.
Yeah.
And then be like, that wasn't for me, and that's okay. But I still at least like explored that, and it was cool.
I think there's just a bit like a curiousness to it that you can have. Like, do I like that? I've never actually tried that before. Like, I've never actually tried figure skating. Right. Maybe I would like that. Let me go try that. Oh, no, I don't. But at least I genuinely gave it a try instead of writing it off because that's gay shit. And that's like, that's what I think makes me sad is there's so many things being written off because it's gay shit. And I think that's like, it's sad. Yeah, like I've said it a minute. It's sad and it's boring. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's just, life is worse for you, I think, in my opinion.
It's less colorful.
Yeah.
Is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are restricting the amount of beauty that you will absorb from life.
Yeah.
And that is, you can handle that however you want to. If that's how you want to live life.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Absolutely. Go for it. So it's pretty late in the episode, but we sure haven't hit everyone's favorite segment, trauma or drama.
Drama or drama, drama or drama, drama or drama, drama or drama.
Okay, welcome to Trauma or Drama. I'm Jack, your host.
And I'm Butch, George's replacement.
All right, Butch.
And I'm a natty ice deep.
Yeah, I'm a natty ice deep.
Sorry, George is back.
You can be Butch.
I can be Butch?
Do you have a question, Butch?
All right. My question for the audience.
Or for me?
For Jack.
Because isn't that, am I supposed to answer
Yes,
that?
and I would love to hear your answer.
Great. But ask it for the audience, too.
When it comes to masculinity, looking at the male body, there are certain ideas that come to mind of what a perfectly male body in masculinity, the theme, should look like. A genie approaches you, and instead of giving you 3 wishes, he gives you 1. And instead of letting you choose the wish, he says, here is your wish. You can sculpt your body exactly how you want it to be shaped and perceived by mankind. How do you want that body perceived? And is that response trauma or drama?
That might be the best question anyone has asked on this podcast. That I was so ready to say every answer I'm about to give you is drama because I have learned so much and grown so much, and I've dropped all of those societal masculine norms. And then when you ask that, I say, I want a big dick and I want abs. That's what I want.
Right.
So fuck. Yeah, I think I want abs and I want a big dick. And that, I wish that wasn't my answer. So I think I have to say trauma.
Okay.
Shit.
What if you yourself, do you want abs and a big dick?
Yeah. What do you mean? Like, do I personally, or do I want to be with someone with abs and a big dick? Or are you saying, like, I personally, if I could change my body, I would change my body so that I had abs and a big dick. Because that is the way society has told me I think I should be. And I wish I could say something different.
I think that's okay. I think that's an okay answer. I think
you're
aware
you're
of...
Right. That's right. It is an okay answer.
Like, you're aware of potential shortcomings or potential like pitfalls of that perception, but that's okay.
I was just so ready to be proud of myself, you know? I was so ready to be like, fucking drama, baby. I've thought it through and I've considered the options and I want the thing that feels healthy to me. And that is something that, I think is body image is something that I think is interesting, which body image is an interesting topic that we haven't even got into. When you're a man and you grow up in a masculine society, freaking out about your body image is not cool. Like, that's what women do. Women look in the mirror. Women don't like the way they look. But men are not allowed to talk about not liking the way they look. At least too much.
Yeah.
Unless they do it in masculine ways, like my muscles.
Right.
Or like, I'm doing this because look at my quadriceps. Like, aren't those so defined?
Well, it was leg day, so it's understandable.
Yeah. But like, for me, I'm like, oh, I'm flabby and have love handles. And like, that's a gay thing to worry about. And I feel feminine for worrying about that. And that is something I've broken down a little bit and have like a much better relationship with myself for. But yeah, if a genie gave me a wish, I'm taking the abs all day, I think. Wow. Great question. Great question that made me think. And that is why we do Trauma or Drama. All right. Well, welcome to the end of the podcast.
I'm glad you all made it here.
I think everybody should know, this is the first episode we've drank during the episode, and I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I had a vodka soda, and then I had a tequila soda because there was a little bit left, and so I just like put a little more in there because I was feeling a little goofy. And then George brought over a 25-ounce natty ice. So I'm, this is probably 2 drinks in and of itself. I'm like 4 deep.
Do you want to know why you're feeling it?
Yeah. Why?
Because you're a pussy. We got a lightweight.
And that is that which bites us.
Thank you all for listening and making it to this hour of the podcast.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you. See you guys next time.